Hi, welcome to Ask Tim. Insurance?
Hey, Tim, I can't hear you. You're going to have to take that off.
It's cold.
You're going to have to take it off anyway.
Right. Hi, welcome to Ask Tim, the insurance technical podcast brought to you by IABNY. I'm your host, Tim Dodge, and I'm coming to you today from the rather chilly confines of the Geek Cave here in IABNY headquarters, where apparently they're trying to freeze me out. It's actually not that bad. It's, a cold day in January, but can't seem to get a fire going here. And it's really, they're able to do this on Survivor. Whatever. All right. What I want to talk to you today about is something that's been in the news recently. There was a terrible accident. I'm recording this on Friday, the 20th of January, and a week ago today, there was a terrible accident off the coast of Italy involving a cruise ship called the Costa Concordia, which ran aground and caused millions of dollars worth of damage. And according to the reports I've got here, killed at least 5 people and several are injured or missing. And really a terrible accident. And what that got me thinking about, obviously, very few people watching this podcast are going to be involved in insuring something of that size. But there are a lot of IABNY members that have risks that might be doing business on the water, or that might actually have water-based operations. You've got Long Island Sound, New York Harbor, Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, the St. Lawrence River, and numerous lakes and waterways, the canal system inside of New York. So there's a lot of opportunity for members to be involved with businesses that are going to be transporting goods on the water, maybe own a ship that's going to be on the water. And so it's worth taking a few minutes to talk about what some of those exposures are and what those businesses can do about them. Now, when you've got watercraft, you have a lot of the same exposures that you would find in an automobile situation. There's an exposure to bodily injury. Now, in the case of the Costa Concordia, as I mentioned, several deaths, even more injuries, and some people still missing. So whenever there's a collision with another vessel, or the ship capsizes, as what happened in this case in Italy, or a plain old sinking, there's going to be injuries and loss of life, and that's a major exposure. That's probably going to be the lion's share of the insurance payout from this incident in Italy. According to the reports I've got here, the ship was insured. The hull of the ship was insured for $513 million, but some estimates are that the total insured loss could be upwards of $1 billion. There's also a pollution liability exposure. Obviously, a ship, particularly a massive ocean liner cruise ship like the one in Italy, carrying thousands of tons of fuel. They're talking about 2,000 or 3,000 tons of fuel that could leak into the ocean as a result of the ship capsizing. But even if you're talking about a water taxi here, or a ship that's transporting goods from one end of Lake Erie to another, or a fishing boat or something like that, there's still going to be fuel on board. There could be other chemicals depending on what's being transported. With a fishing boat, it's primarily going to be fuel, motor oil, engine lubricants, things like that. But depending on the goods that are being hauled, there could be additional pollution exposures. And so that's something to be very much aware of. And obviously the property damage liability exposure. You could damage other watercraft in a collision. You could damage piers, wharves, or docks if the pilot, the captain, loses control of the boat and collides with a dock or a wharf or a pier or something like that. Or then, in some cases, of course, there are buildings that are right over the water. Restaurants, for example, in certain areas, like Ontario, Alexandria Bay, Long Island, places like that, where there could be restaurants built right on the water, and a ship colliding with that could cause extensive damage. Then, of course, you have to worry about physical damage to the vessel itself, repair or replacement. Again, this cruise ship in Italy insured for $513 million. There's also the cost of getting it right side up and hopefully getting it out of the water. So there's a cost of removal or salvage of the wreck, in addition to the repair or replacement. Then there's the loss of use. There's a major business income exposure that comes with a commercial vessel. That cruise ship is going to be out, if it's ever used again, it's going to be out of commission for months, maybe years. And if a business in New York relies on Watercraft to ship its products to Canada or to across Lake Champlain over to Vermont or whatever, there's going to be a loss of revenue associated with the inability to use that vessel. So these are all exposures that you need to be concerned about when you're working with an account that has a water-based exposure. Now, the types of coverage that you need to be looking at, and unfortunately there are not standard forms. There's no standard ISO forms for any of these, so I can't quote chapter and verse like I prefer to do in these podcasts. But from a liability standpoint, you're looking at protection and indemnity coverage, which covers the vessel owner for certain specified causes of loss for liability. So it's not like the comprehensive, the commercial general liability coverage form, which provides a broad grant of coverage and then narrows it by way of exclusions. The protection and indemnity form will actually list the causes of loss that is going to provide liability coverage for. So it is inherently a more defined, narrow type of coverage than you may be used to with general liability. The other notable part about it is that, unlike in the general liability form, there is no explicit duty to defend in the protection and indemnity form. The GL form specifically says the insurance company has the right and duty to provide defense. The protection and indemnity form may not say that, very often does not. Although I understand from the research I did before this podcast that as a practical matter, a lot of times the insurance carriers will appoint the attorneys or indemnify or reimburse the insured for the cost of the legal defense. So a lot of times the carriers will do that, but it's not built into the form. That's something you need to be aware of. From the pollution liability standpoint, again, these forms are all going to be different, but as I just discussed, you could have fuel leakage, you could have pollution events from different types of cargo, and so you're going to need an environmental impairment policy or pollution liability policy to pick up the cost of any cleanup costs and any other costs, perhaps lawsuits assessed by private parties. Probably won't cover things like fines or penalties assessed by governmental authorities, but you're going to need that coverage to cover the cost of cleanup and other associated costs. The ship itself, the vessel itself, would be covered under a hull insurance policy. Again, usually, as you would find with other property policies, there's going to be a deductible, sometimes a substantial one. Again, in the case of our cruise ship here, we're talking about a multi-million-dollar deductible, $30 million or something like that. The vessels that the people watching this podcast are going to be potentially insuring aren't going to have deductibles that high. But all the hull insurance policies are going to be different. Again, there's no standard form. So you want to work closely with your carriers, get copies of the forms if you can, to find out exactly what's in there, what's covered, what's not, so you can explain those to your insureds so they can make an educated decision about what to buy. I don't have anything on, usually at this part I say for more information, see this section on the IABNE website. Unfortunately, we don't have anything up there right now about watercraft insurance. That's something I hope to change over the next few weeks. Might have something up there by the time this episode actually gets released. But in the meantime, I would highly encourage that you take a look at some blogs. I got a lot of my information for this report from the Insurance Information Institute blog, which is just titled The Insurance Blog. And there's been lots of other reports in the Insurance Press, Insurance Journal, National Underwriter have all done a good job covering the story involving the cruise ship in Italy. And so you can find out a lot more about the marine insurance world just by reading those reports. And as I said, I'm hoping to get something up on our website or at least get something on the Ask Tim blog about this before too long. If you need to get in touch with me, you can call me at 800-851-8853, extension 229. You can email me at tdodge@iabne.org. You can find me on Twitter as AskTim. You can leave comments on the blog at insurancegeek.typepad.com. You can send me a fax at 888-432-0510. On those rare occasions when I remember to log into AOL Instant Messenger, you can find me hanging out there. Again, the ID is TDOG4494. Last thing I want to cover before we go, the cards and letters have been pouring in since our last episode, inquiring as to the status of JB's health. I'm pleased to tell you that JD is upright. He's filming this for me right now. The doctors have assured me that there was no permanent brain damage. It's all good. He has withdrawn any threats of a lawsuit, which is even better. Under advice of legal counsel, however, I am unable to confirm or deny any reports that I have to wax his car for the next 6 months. But anyway, thanks for your concern. Thanks for watching this episode of Ask Tim. We'll be back with another one in a few weeks. And until then, if you want to get on board a sinking ship, don't forget to ask Tim.